It started like any normal day. Or, at least, I thought it was going to be. But sometimes, the world flips on its head, and nothing is ever the same again. I never imagined my life would take such a dark turn. The kind of turn that makes you question your sanity and your very identity. It all started with a conversation I had with my mother-in-law. She was kind, loving, everything a mother-in-law should be. But things had changed when her health began to deteriorate. She had been in and out of the hospital for months, and I found myself taking care of more and more of the house. At first, it felt like a duty. After all, I was married to her son, Nam. We had a small apartment together, and I loved him deeply. Our relationship was like any other, peaceful, uneventful, until that one moment. It was late when Nam left for his business trip, and I was sitting in the living room, going over some papers for work. That's when Mr. N, my father-in-law, came into the room. Mr. N was an older man, round 60, a man of few words, who had always been polite, almost distant. But there was something different about him that night. He sat beside me without saying much. His eyes were tired, his hands trembling slightly. It wasn't like him. He spoke quietly, as though choosing every word carefully. "You're doing a great job with You're a good daughter-in-law," he said, his voice soft. I smiled at him. "It's nothing. I just want to help where I can." He stared at me for a moment. I noticed something in his gaze, something I had never seen before. It made me uncomfortable, but I dismissed it. He was just tired, I thought. He needed rest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way Mr. N had looked at me lingered in my mind. Was it the stress of his wife's illness, or was it something else? I tried to push it away, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. 2 days later, everything changed. I woke up in a cold sweat. My head ached like a drum. My limbs were numb. I tried to stand, but my body wouldn't obey. The room was spinning. I collapsed back onto the bed. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I thought it was Nam, but when I turned, it wasn't him. It was Mr. N. He was standing there, watching me with an odd look in his eyes. There was no anger, no surprise, just something cold. A part of me wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My voice wouldn't come out. "You're okay. I'm here for you," he said softly, like he was trying to comfort me, but it felt more like warning. I wanted to push him away, to ask him why he was in my room, but my body betrayed me. I was weak. I didn't have the strength to fight back. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. They said I had collapsed, that I had been unconscious for nearly a week. They told me it was because of stress, that I had fainted due to exhaustion. But there was something in the way the doctors looked at me that made me uneasy. They kept asking questions that didn't make sense, and I couldn't remember anything. Nothing at all, from the past few days. When I got home, everything felt wrong. It wasn't the same apartment. It wasn't the same life. It felt as though something had shifted. Nam wasn't home, and my mother-in-law was in the hospital again. But Mr. N, he was there. Always. He was the one who brought me my meals. He helped me walk to the bathroom. He watched me like a hawk. A week later, the nausea started. At first, I thought it was just from the medication. But when I missed my period, I began to worry. I went to the doctor and had a blood test done. When I saw the results, everything came crashing down. I was pregnant. I tried to deny it, but the truth was clear. My heart raced. My hands shook as I sat in the doctor's office, staring at the tests. The nurse handed me a pamphlet about pregnancy, but I couldn't focus. The only thing I could think of was who the father was. It wasn't Nam. It couldn't have been. We hadn't been intimate for weeks. But who then? And that's when the horrible truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Mr. N. He was the only one who had been near me. The only one who had stayed by my side when I was unconscious. But how could it be? I couldn't accept it. I couldn't. But the truth was undeniable. I had been violated. But the worst part was that I had no memory of it. No recollection of what happened, or how it happened. Only the eerie feeling that had stayed with me since waking up. The sense that something was terribly wrong. That my body no longer belonged to me. I stood there, frozen, the pregnancy test still clutched in my hand, my mind reeling. Everything round me felt like a blur. I couldn't breathe. How was this even possible? The only answer that made sense, the one that kept me awake all night, was the one I didn't want to accept. Mr. N, the father-in-law, the man who had been by my side when I woke up, the one who had stayed when Nam was gone, the one who had touched me in ways I couldn't remember. But it had to be him. He was the only one there, the only one who had access to me when I was unconscious. My body ached at the thought of it, but the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the test. The words on the screen were clear. Pregnant. My thoughts raced. I couldn't tell Nam. Not yet. I couldn't bear to look him in the eye and admit what had happened. He would never believe me. He would never accept the truth. So I did what any woman in my position would do. I tried to hide it. But you can't hide something like this. As the days passed, the nausea worsened. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think of anything other than the horrible truth that was growing inside me. I started to distance myself from everyone. Mr. N seemed to know exactly what was happening. He watched me carefully, as though waiting for me to crack. His eyes were always on me, his gaze lingering too long. He would smile when he saw me, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was something darker. One evening, he walked into the living room, while I was sitting on the couch, trying to distract myself with a book. "You look pale," he said, his voice soft and concerned. "Are you feeling all right?" I forced a smile. "Just tired," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. He sat down beside me, too close. The scent of his cologne filled the air, thick and suffocating. "You know, I've been thinking about you a lot lately," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been so strong, so brave. It's been hard on you, hasn't it?" I didn't know what to say. I couldn't speak. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get away from him. But I couldn't move. He reached over and placed his hand on mine. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm here for you. Always." The words sent a chill down my spine. I tried to pull my hand away, but he tightened his grip. And then it happened. In that moment, the truth hit me harder than anything before. He knew exactly what had happened, and he was proud of it. My stomach churned, my head spun. I stood up, feeling like I was suffocating. "I have to go," I muttered, barely able to breathe through the panic rising in my chest. But before I could leave the room, he stood up too. "You can't run away from this," he said softly. "You're carrying my child, and there's no going back." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled backward, feeling like the world was closing in round me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything but stare at him. I couldn't run from the truth. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I couldn't escape the reality of what had happened. But I couldn't ignore it either. I had to do something. I had to find a way to make him pay. The next morning, I called the police. I didn't know how to do it, how to explain everything that had happened. But I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't let him get away with it. I told them everything, from the moment I woke up in the hospital, to the strange behavior of Mr. N, to the moments of silence that haunted me every day. I showed them the pregnancy test, the blood work, everything I had. And I told them about the hidden cameras I'd found in the house, cameras that Mr. N had installed, cameras that watched me when I was at my most vulnerable. The police didn't take long to investigate. They questioned Mr. N, and the truth came out. The police arrived at the house the very next day. Their presence felt like a weight lifted off my chest, yet I still couldn't breathe. My hand shook because they asked me to recount everything that had happened. I told them about the cameras, about the strange behavior, about everything that had led me to that terrifying realization. And they believed me. But Mr. N, he didn't look like someone who was scared. He didn't even seem surprised. When the police questioned him, he just smiled. "You don't understand," he said, his voice calm, almost detached. "She needed me. I saved her." His words made my stomach churn. But it wasn't just his words. It was the way he said them. Like he truly believed what he was saying. The officers tried to get him to explain himself, but he kept repeating the same thing. She was in pain. She needed someone to help her. The more he spoke, the more his story twisted. He claimed that everything he did was for me, that I had asked him for help, that I had wanted it. She was so vulnerable, he said. I just wanted to help her heal. I almost couldn't believe my ears. The police were relentless. They continued pressing him, asking for details, trying to get him to slip up. But Mr. N just kept on with his calm, rehearsed answers. He made it sound like he was the hero in all of this. He said that he had always taken care of me, that it was his duty as a father-in-law. As the interrogation went on, I felt like I was drowning in his lies. How could he be so calm? How could he stand there and speak like nothing had happened? But then, it happened. The breakthrough. One of the officers, a young woman named Detective Lou, noticed something strange in the footage from the hidden cameras. It wasn't just the footage of me lying in bed, unconscious. There was more. The cameras had recorded Mr. N in the house at odd hours. But more disturbingly, they had captured him tampering with the recordings. In one of the videos, he was seen wiping down the camera lenses, erasing parts of the footage, the parts that would have shown the true nature of his actions. And that's when the full weight of the crime hit. Mr. N wasn't just a predator. He was an intelligent manipulator, someone who knew exactly what he was doing, and he had been covering his tracks the entire time. When Detective Lou showed him the footage, he stopped smiling. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. The police didn't waste another second. They arrested him right there, charging him with sexual assault, tampering with evidence, and unlawful surveillance. I couldn't believe it. The man who had been so close to me, who had touched me, manipulated me, was now facing the consequences. But even as he was led away in handcuffs, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite finished. The case went to trial. The whole town was shocked. No one could believe that someone like Mr. N, the quiet, reserved father-in-law, was capable of such horrific acts. The testimonies were heart-wrenching. The police had found more disturbing evidence in his personal belongings, journals detailing his obsession with me, photos he had taken without my knowledge, and a twisted diary of his plans to make me his. And through it all, he was silent. He couldn't bring himself to face me, not after everything. Not after learning that his own father had done this to me. The trial was long. The evidence was damning. Mr. N's defense was weak, and in the end, he was found guilty. The jury convicted him, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the truth had been fully exposed, and justice had been served. But even after the verdict, the scars remained. The trial had opened old wounds, and the healing process was long and difficult. But as the days passed, I began to rebuild. I started going to therapy, working through the trauma. And more importantly, I started focusing on Hope, my son. Every time I looked into his innocent eyes, I felt a mix of love and guilt. I loved him more than anything, but I also knew that the man who had created him had done so with darkness in his heart. But Hope wasn't just a reminder of the past. He was my future. He was my reason to keep going, to keep fighting. I named him Hope because he represented the light that had come out of the darkness. I would raise him to know that he was loved, that he wasn't a product of tragedy, but a symbol of strength, survival, and resilience.